Hello everyone, I'm Rob the Robot from the Adobe Education team, and I would like to welcome you to the Inject Creativity Live Show. This is an online show for educators interested in digital creativity. This show is live on the Adobe for Education YouTube channel, as well as other social media, and past recordings can be viewed via bit.ly/adobe-inject. Any teacher, whether an Adobe user or not, in any K-12 or higher education sector and any subject area is welcome. Here are your hosts, Dr. Tim Kitchen and Erin Raithke.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Inject Creativity Live Show, the online show that aims to inspire teachers to enhance creativity and engagement in all curriculum areas. Welcome, Erin.
Hi, Tim, and a special welcome to everyone who's joined us live for this special post-Apac Summit show being recorded on Wednesday, the 6th of October, 2021 via the Adobe for Education YouTube channel, as well as the Australasian Adobe in Education Facebook group. We encourage you to say hi in the chat and let us know where you are from and where you teach.
While you are in the chat sharing a bit about yourself, we'd like to do an acknowledgement of country. We respect and honour Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander elders past, present and future, as well as all Indigenous people from the lands we reach out to during this event.
We acknowledge their stories, traditions and living cultures. We acknowledge them as the first peoples in our lands, the first scientists and the first creatives, and we commit to building a brighter future together.
During this episode, we'll be hearing from special guest and Adobe Education Leader from New South Wales Department of Education, Mr. Brett Kent.
Paul Mclean, the Director of Rare Innovations, is in New Zealand and will be back with us as our thought leader.
We'll be looking back at some of the highlights of last week's very successful Apac Adobe Education Summit.
And our behind-the-scenes guru, Adobe Customer Success Manager, Jerry Wong, will have a special quiz question for us.
You're watching Inject Creativity Live with Tim Kitchen and Erin Raithke.
Well, we're not getting that many comments at the moment, so those of you who are with us live, say hello in the chat, and we do have our regular Tim Cosgrove all the way from Toronto, where it's 3:30 in the morning. Like, seriously, Tim, this is when you're supposed to be sleeping, but we very much appreciate you being with us live. And for the rest of you, where it's a much more reasonable hour, why aren't you here live? Come and join us live and go into the chat. And we've got someone here from the Philippines, Mclean. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce, but he's saying hi. And I'm pretty sure he's from the Philippines, joining us from LinkedIn. Definitely from the Philippines is Roland, saying good afternoon, where it's 3:32 p.m. in the Philippines. And John Clark, he's a regular as well. Hello, John. Nice to have you with us. And Roland is just doing a little congratulations for last week's APAC 2021 Adobe Education Summit event, which is lovely. Thank you, Roland, and thank you for your contribution. We're going to be looking at last week's event. And I must admit to you, Erin, I'm still recovering. It was a massive week. How about you?
Well, you put in a massive amount of effort to pull all of our speakers and our presenters, as well as presenting yourself. I'm not surprised that you needed a good solid nap afterwards. But yeah, it was a huge 3 days, incredibly fulfilling, perhaps overstimulating. I definitely had a lot to absorb afterwards, and it was a great couple of days.
Well, we'll be reflecting a little bit more on the summit a little bit later in the show.
You're watching Inject Creativity Live with Tim Kitchen and Erin Raithke.
Thanks, Rob. Let's now welcome our good friend and the Inject Creativity Live moderator and techie whiz, Jerry Wong. Hi, Jerry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'll be looking out for your comments and questions in the chat and posting the most relevant ones. To encourage you to use the live chat, I have an Adobe-related quiz question for you. Approximately how many teachers pre-registered from last week's APAC Adobe Education Summit?
So that's an interesting one. The only way you're going to know the answer to that question is if you were at the summit, because we mentioned it, or if you did watch the recordings, because it was mentioned a few times. And I'm just having a look in the chat now to see if anyone has responded yet. might need to give a clue, Erin. I'm going to give a clue. It was more than 600. So
we've got a winner.
Do we? Oh, we do.
We
John.
do.
Oh, taking them off. There we go.
I think
John.
I think John must have been typing it in as you started to give that hint. So very well done, John.
Well done, John. I don't have my applause sound effects working at the moment, so consider yourself well and truly applauded. That was fantastic. And it was amazing to actually have 700 people register, but then to actually have more watching the show. So a lot of people who hadn't registered just came and joined, which was just brilliant to have. And we'll give you a few more numbers a little bit later on as we progress through the show.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of Inject Creativity Live with Tim Kitchen and Erin Rathke.
Thanks, Rob. Let's meet our guests for this episode and welcome Brett and Paul to the stage. Let's get Paul up as well, if we can. Jerry, there we go. Oh, I can hear Paul. We can hear your computer buzzing away in the background.
Too much hard work going on.
There we go. It's working very hard.
So, Brett, you've been an Adobe education leader for many years. Tell us a bit about the work you do for the New South Wales Department of Education.
I work with T4L team, so Technology for Learning. We work with another wing of that called two other wings really. I work with the STEM.T4L, so Science, Technology, Engineering and Math, where we hire out a range of different technology and equipment and then mentor teachers on how to use it. And I also work with another program called the Rural Access Gap, where we look to close the gap between our rural and remote schools and students when compared to the experience of an inner city student.
I'm constantly impressed with the teams that are part of the New South Wales Department of Education in terms of digital, in terms of driving digital capacities within schools around the state. It is the second largest education system on the planet, and they've got some fantastic groups of people working really hard. And Brett, it's been wonderful to be working with you relatively closely now for 8 years it's been since I first met you.
Yeah, it would be about that long, yeah.
Now, Paul, welcome back to the show. Tell us about Rare Innovations and the work that you're currently doing in New Zealand.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having us back. Currently working with Apac College still and expanding and building the Digital Mastery Institute at the college, which has been a challenge, but also very rewarding. So putting together real-world learning, connecting the school to the community is our next step, but driving, and I'm going to talk about it later on, the New Zealand curricula for NCA, which is very, very exciting. And then under Rare separately, I'm helping teachers get to grips with those new curricular changes and driving that digital creative argument, which is keeping me occupied in my spare time.
You've been a thought leader in New Zealand education for many years. I remember first meeting you also about 8 years ago, pretty early in my Adobe journey, and at the time you were working in Auckland, and it was lovely to see the work that you were doing at that school and how you've just gone on to increase that work in a much wider part of the country. So we're looking forward to hearing from you very soon.
All right, thanks, Tim. Yep, thank you.
Now, Brett, can you share with us something interesting about yourself that not many people would know?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a little hard. I was thinking about this long and hard. I'm going to go back to 1998 was the first World Archery Championships I ever competed in. Because we were talking about old times earlier and talking about things that happened in the 90s, and it made me think. I thought, yeah, probably not many people know that one.
That's amazing. Representing Australia in a World Championships, that's pretty unique. So congratulations.
Yeah, very well done.
And Paul, how about you? What's something interesting that not many people would know about you, sir?
Okay, well, so on the theme of World Championships and being English, my England football team bombed out of the European Championships last year. So I'm proud to say, and hopefully this is a bit of intrigue, I've got more winners' medals having played at Wembley Stadium in football than the entire current English football team.
All right.
Is that one?
That was about 20 years ago. I played in a final at Wembley, and our friends and I just joke about the quality of the England football team. And when you have an amateur player like me with more winners' medals, we've got a bit of a problem.
Oh, that's
Oh
cool.
dear.
would
Now,
that be-
Brett, oh, sorry.
So would that be old Wembley or new Wembley?
Well, I'm proud to say that was the old Wembley, and it was one of the last games that was played there. I'm told before they got the JCB diggers out, and so it was amazing day.
I know my Wembley because I watched Ted Lasso.
Okay.
See. Now, Brett, can you share with us tell us about what you'll be sharing with us today?
I'm actually going to be sharing a very underutilized app, which is Adobe Audition, which is the dedicated piece of software for sound editing. And so I'm going to dive into a little bit of recording, a little bit of applying some effects, those kinds of things to clean up our recordings that go along with possibly movie, but also for many other means as well.
I'll be keeping a close eye on that as well, Brett, because I have been meaning to get and, dig into Adobe Audition more, but I've opened up the interface and wasn't quite sure of where to start. So I'm glad to be having you on this evening.
And of course, it's a great tool for podcasting, which is becoming a very popular way of communicating these days.
That might feature.
Oh, there we go. And Paul, as our thought leader tonight, what will you be sharing with us later in the episode?
Oh, thank you. So through this series, probably since last year, we've had 3 articles released on digital mastery and how New Zealand responds to changing formats as a result of COVID. And I'm just going to give an overview on how we actually regenerate New Zealand as article number 3 through transformative education.
Fantastic. Well, thanks, Brett and Paul. We're looking forward to hearing from both of you very soon.
You're watching Inject Creativity Live with Tim Kitchen and Aaron Raithke.
You may have already noticed that Brett and Paul are members of the AEL community, the Adobe Education Leaders community. This is the highest level of Adobe's education community programs, and it's a very exclusive group with only 64 teachers qualifying in the Australasian region.
Adobe Education Leaders are active members of the Adobe Education Exchange and are very passionate about using Adobe applications to enhance digital literacy, communication, and creativity skills in schools and universities.
They regularly share this passion with a network of educators wider than their own school or faculty and help support the work of the Adobe and education teams around the globe.
If you are interested in becoming an AEL, the first step is to do the Adobe Creative Educator Program and get your ACE Level 1 and 2 badges via adobe.ly/ACE.
When you've been part of the ACE program and shown that you are part of a wider network of educators, you could be in line to be nominated to be an AEL.
It's well worth the effort if you are keen to be inspired by an international network of creative educators, connect directly with and support the Adobe Education team, and run professional learning for your network with free Adobe software and merchandise.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of Inject Creativity Live with Tim Kitchen and Aaron Raithke.
Well, Aaron, last week was a big week. The 2021 Apac Adobe Education Summit was held with a special open day for any teacher that was held on Wednesday, registered, as we said earlier, by 700 teachers from over 30 countries, but then viewed by over 2,000 teachers within a few days of its live recordings.
The actual summit went over 3 days with a pre-conference day just for Adobe Education Leaders, and following the open day, an Adobe Creative Challenge Day for AELs and Adobe Creative educators.
The feedback was outstanding, with 98% of participants agreeing or strongly agreeing that the overall quality of the event was excellent and they would recommend it to others.
If you've missed any of the sessions or would like to look back at some of the highlights, look up the Summit website at adobe.ly/edu-summit21 to see links to the recordings.
I would like to say thank you to the Adobe Education leaders who were on the Summit committee, and all the Adobe Education leaders and everyone else who presented a session or two and shared their passions for digital creativity to such a large audience of educators from this region of the globe. Now, Aaron, I'd like to share my screen because I did a special post about the summit. soon after, it was probably only a couple of hours after it finished, actually, I put this together. Starts with a bit of a collage. You can see just about all the presenters throughout the 3 days are represented there in that collage. And then there's a bit of a spiel here, but most important, you can see this link to Erin Raithke's Spark page of the Open Day event. I'll just quickly click into that now. I'll open it up in a separate window. And this is a lovely reflection on the Open Day. As we scroll through this Spark page, you can see lots of images and text and documents, all sort of Erin's reflections as the day went through. Erin, you were not only presenting on this day, you were co-hosting with me, and you put this together all at the same time. How was that?
Yes. Well, I think I mentioned a few times in the day, I felt a little bit like I was in octopus mode. But no, it was mostly sort of notes for my own benefit. I think the presenters that you'll notice probably that had the thinnest notes was you and me when we were presenting together, because I'm not quite clever enough to take screenshots as I'm presenting. But yeah, it was a really, really lovely day. And because there's so much content, it's really worthwhile for me, at least, to have this reference page for myself to keep a basic track of what everyone was doing. So then I could go back and more easily find some of my favorite sections in the recordings and revisit those presenters that I wanted to sort of watch in a bit more detail.
And if we just jump back to my post here, what I've done is I've created a little section here where you can see the image of the presenter, and then you can click next to their image. So click here to see Brian's sessions. You can go straight to their recording, and you can then go and skip through and just see the parts that you're really interested in noting about. And this is a nice way of just documenting what happened. And there's our session, Erin. This is what we got up to. So what was potentially lacking in your Spark page is here now with a screen grab of the two of us in action. Erin, just looking here, tell us, in fact, I'm going to bring Brett up to the screen as well. Brett, we didn't rehearse this. I'm going to bring you up because you were an important part of our summit over the pre-conference and on the Open Day too. Brett, what were your highlights of the day?
Oh, look, the highlights have got to be just hearing from everyone, really. I really love being able to get a bit of an insight into what everybody else is doing, and part of being within the community, my highlight has always been hearing from the other educators.
Brett, I just need to mention, let's bring it back here to this classroom success stories. And I want to thank Joel. I don't know if Joel's with us live at the moment, but he often watches the recordings if he's not with us live. And I want to thank Joel. He was on the committee for a number of our committee meetings, and he had this idea of, rather than doing a demo or teaching how to use the product, let's work out why we use the product and show some examples of how the products have been successful in our curriculum. But let's do it in a K-12 and a higher ed context together as a group. And I thought, that's such a brilliant concept, and it worked really well. Erin, what were your highlights of the day?
Well, I really, really enjoyed the opening shares that we got from our Adobe crew from the US, because it's always a real thrill to get those presenters in, because we don't hear from them as often as we do our local presenters, to share what's changed with the Adobe Education Exchange, in some cases what might be coming up, and also to hear about Adobe's priorities and approaches with actually, contacting people and consulting and figuring out what best can be done to help educators and students to utilize the tools in a real world context. I thought that was wonderful and really inspiring, just from a professional point of view.
Got a lovely comment here from Tim Cosgrove. Apac 2021 was an amazing virtual conference. Really enjoyed the networking with other AELs. Thanks to the Adobe Education Summit hosts and presenters. Thank you, Tim. Always good to have some great feedback. And Brett, one thing that I've added here that a lot of people wouldn't have seen are the Creative Catalyst talks that were done during our pre-conference. And we've got Max, we've got Juliet, we've got Jason, and then we've got Craig and Lauren and Mark. And they did a fantastic job during the pre-conference. Do you want to just give us a quick summary of what a Creative Catalyst talk is? Because you've done a number of them over the years.
Yeah. Oh, look, without branding it, I think they're very similar to somewhat like a TED Talk or a TEDx talk, where you really take a deep dive into something that you've done, or a concept, or something that you are really talking through in that kind of public speaking type of forum, but really diving into it and exploring it and almost having a conversation with your audience, and very entertaining, and you get a really good insight into the way people are thinking about certain things within their classroom or within the creative sphere.
Absolutely. And I thought, because there was a smaller audience, it was just for Adobe Education leaders. This is an opportunity now for any teacher to go and see some of these gems, because they were fantastic, from some incredible teachers who represent higher education, K-12, and it's just fantastic to see such a variety. So thank you again, everyone who was involved. Erin, any last minute comments about the summit before we finish our little summary here?
I'd just like to thank all of the Adobe Education leaders and other speakers who shared all of the information that they did on the day. A lot of people put a lot of effort into pulling things together, and it's truly inspiring to see what people are using, and not just entry-level tools in the primary sector as well, but using like what people think of as quite high-level software and giving children the opportunity to explore them, because all it's doing is setting up our students for success as they grow through their educational journey.
Good. Brett, any last-minute comments from you? Nope.
Next year, when it comes up, come along.
Yes.
I like it. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the high-level products. That presentation from Emma Wise from New Zealand, and mental blank, who was working with Erin? It was Mark Wazowski from TAFE New South Wales, when they were showing how they're using After Effects, Adobe After Effects in K-12 and also in a higher ed context. That blew me away, seeing the students work there. So that was brilliant. So again, thanks everyone for being involved in the summit. And if you haven't seen it, go to it now. The link Jerry had up on the screen there. So bring it up again, Jerry, just as we finish this off, in case you need to. We would like to watch the recordings. Otherwise, go to timkitchen.net, and it's the most recent post in my journal.
You're watching Inject Creativity Live with Tim Kitchen and Erin Raithke.
Well, Erin, now that the Apac Summit is over, the next major Adobe event to look forward to is Adobe Max.
Adobe Max is Adobe's largest annual conference event, so usually attracting 20,000 of the world's creatives in one location. Last year, over 5 million people registered to the virtual version of this amazing event, and we are expecting even more this year. So look up max.adobe.com to find out more.
Being a virtual event, there's nothing stopping all of you registering and getting involved in the 2021 Adobe Max conference, which will be held on October 28 and 29. That's the APAC dates, as a truly international event covering all major time zones.
Adobe Max is when Adobe announces new products and new features to current products, and the very popular sneak segment, where they reveal potential new products and features.
Erin, just off script here, do you know that the sneak segment was actually every year put together by Ben Forter, who is a great friend of the Adobe Education team? In fact, that's his job. When he's not doing sneaks, he's working with educators all over the world. He's Clara's boss.
Oh,
So
fabulous. Yeah, I did not know that. Good.
There you go.
Bit of trivia.
So look up max.adobe.com/sessions/educators. There's the link going, max.adobe.com/sessions/educators. Don't say that quickly 20 times. To find out more and register for the Adobe Max Education track.
This year, we have a strong APAC connection where our very own Juliet Bentley, Craig Dalmeyer Power, and Dr. Tim Kitchen will all be presenting for the first time, as well as Sarah Madison, the Deputy Vice Chancellor of Swinburne University.
Juliet will be sharing a session titled Fostering Digital Literacy in the K-12 Creative Classroom, and Craig and I will be collaborating with AEL and Master Teacher, Adobe Master Teacher, Lisa Gottfried from New Technology High School in California. We'll be doing a session titled Giving Students a Voice with Character Animator. And Professor Sarah Madison from Swinburne, she'll be presenting a topic, Transforming Education with Creative and Digital Skills.
Go to max.adobe.com to register so that you don't miss out on this essential annual digital creativity conference.
Hi folks, we are about to be inspired by an AEL, an Adobe Education Leader. AELs are passionate about the use of Adobe tools to inspire creative learning and teaching experiences in the delivery of either primary, secondary or post-secondary curricula. The first step to becoming an AEL is to be an ACE, an Adobe Creative Educator, via edx.adobe.com/adobe-creative-educator. You don't have to be an Adobe expert to be an ACE, just a teacher interested in engaging students through creative digital learning experiences. The ACE program is a free international micro-credentialing program. It only takes a few hours to earn your level 1 badge, and the focus is on creativity rather than Adobe. Please share this program with your colleagues and get involved. Who knows, you may one day also become an Adobe Education Leader.
And it's a delight to welcome Adobe Education Leader Brett Kent to the show. Over to you, Brett.
Hi there. What I'm going to go through now is I'm going to go through Adobe Audition, but I'm going to be talking to it in the sense of getting your students or yourself to record your voice, record ambient sounds, affect music, affect sound effects, and actually produce a piece of audio for multiple purposes. Bear with me for a moment while I share my screen. Now, what I'm going to begin by showing you is actually a piece of work that myself and one of my colleagues put together that we sort of titled it The Student Podcaster. So before Tim mentioned podcasting, now for our New South Wales Department of Education or New South Wales TAFE audience, it's only for you, but just really quickly, if you go into your staff portal, go into My Learning Tools on the left-hand side of the screen, scroll down and navigate to the stem.t4l learning library. It will bring you into the learning library that looks somewhat like this. But at the top of the screen, there's a section that says for students, and there's a section called the Student Podcaster. And that's what I'm going to be going through this evening. Well, it's this evening for me. We're all in different time zones, I suppose. Now, so I'm going to be going through things like audio recording, adding music and special effects, really affecting and editing your audio, cutting it, but then also doing things like podcast planning. And I'm going to come into the podcast planning now. The podcast planning document that we put up looks like this. And the idea is that what we're looking for is the amount of time that things are going to appear, a rough script of what you're going to talk about, any special effects that might be happening during that, and then the music and the type of timing that you're going to be using. However, you'll notice that in the modules and the way we put it together, planning is actually module 4. And you think, don't you plan first? However, I'm going to argue that you want to get to know the tool and you want to know what you're planning for before you know what you're planning for. So inside of Adobe Audition, when you first open it up, it looks like this. Excuse me. It looks like this. And most of us are going to look at it and think, I don't even really know where to start. It's kind of this ominous gray screen and you're not really sure where to begin. What I've got enabled on the side here is I've actually got the media browser. Now, like all Adobe programs, when you go up to the top of your screen in the center and you click on Window, anything in that window menu that has a tick next to it are the things that you can currently see. If you had a tick next to everything, you probably wouldn't be able to see what you were doing. So I've got my media browser ticked on, and that's where I've got a few little sound samples, but that's not where I'm going to start. I'm going to start with an actual recording. Now, down the bottom in the center of the screen, we've got this red button, and as I hover over it, it says record. Now, what I can do, I'm going to click the record button, and it's going to come up with a couple of things to begin with. It's first going to ask us for a file name, and let's give it something that makes sense to us. So I'm going to call this audio recording 1. Now, it's going to ask you for some amount of technical information. It's going to ask for things like sample rate and channels and whether it's stereo and the bit depth and all those kinds of things. It should adopt the most appropriate setting for the computer that you're currently using. So if you've never done anything like this before, just leave it alone. Something to note. When you click the OK button, it will immediately start recording. So don't click OK and then think that there's a record button after that. We're already starting recording as soon as you click the OK button. So I'm going to click OK. We are now recording. And you can see the histogram starting to populate. As I clap my hands, we can see the sound spikes start to come up. We can pause that recording at any time. Now, the thing that I really like about this is a really neat little trick. Over on the bottom towards the left-hand side, I've got this option to stop. I can also click my space bar at any time. So if you want a little keyboard shortcut, you can just click the space bar. I've only paused it. So if I were to click record again, it will continue recording and it will continue populating my timeline. Now, if I click the stop button, it consolidates that recording that we've just done. The thing that I like about this is if I come over and I click record again, it actually starts recording wherever I left off. So at any time, I press stop and I've got my current recording. You'll notice that the current recording, the latest one, is highlighted. It's selected. And we're going to come into some selection tools later. Now, what I now have is my first audio recording. And in my media browser, over on the left-hand side of the screen, I've got audio recording 1. That's what I named it. Now, what we've got here is we've got a few different bits and pieces that we can see on screen. The first thing that I'm going to do at the top in the center of my screen, I'm going to come right up to this little selection tool, the time selection tool, and I'm going to select a piece of my audio. So those sections in the middle where I clapped, if I was going to do this like a clapboard, like we do in cinema, like in a film production, I would probably come to just after where the claps are. I can then highlight those claps and I could say, I know that I don't want that bit. I know that I would like to remove that section. So I can press delete on my keyboard and it automatically ripple deletes. It actually closes the gap between those two things because we have a single track. Now, what I'm going to now do is I'm going to come to the top of the screen here and we're going to have a look at some of the other selection tools. I have a marquee selection tool that we're familiar with from applications like Photoshop and Illustrator and other ones. We also have our familiar lasso selection tool. We have our paintbrush selection tool, and we have this spot healing brush. What I have the opportunity to now do is I can say, well, I can see visually down the bottom here, I can see a visual spectral, I find that word hard to say, a spectral display of the sound recording that we've done. Now, if you start to see little hot spots or speckles or crackles or things that have happened within your recording, you can use your selection tools like your marquee tool, like your lasso tool, and you can go around those little sections and you can actually start to pull those pieces out. Now, if I press delete on my keyboard now, it will actually take a chunk out of my recording. However, on my main histogram at the top, and I'm going to move that down and I'm going to click and drag. It's going to let me click and drag, come back to my correct selection tool. You'll notice that in my timeline, it hasn't actually removed an entire piece of sound. It's just removed that particular spectral frequency. So if you see something that happens, if you hear a little crackle or a buzz or something and it's an anomaly, some sort of weirdness that happens in your recording, you can actually just remove little sections like that.
Hey, Brett, I'm just going to interrupt for a sec. Not to say you're running out of time because you're not, and this is fantastic. I just want to give you a quick example where that's really been helpful. So often in schools, we don't have soundproof environments. And I was recording in a school and there was a jackhammer in the background.
Oh, goodness.
And it was so annoying. They decided to start their jackhammer just when we wanted to do the recording. But I said, no worries, guys, that's fine, because we did exactly what we identified what spectrum the jackhammer was, and we did exactly that, problem solved. So it's such a great solution for schools. Don't let me interrupt you though, Brett. Keep going.
Absolutely fine. Now, the next thing that we probably want to take a look at is some of the actual effects. So, yes, we can manually go through and we can say, all right, I would like to paint out that little sound spike, or I would like to paint out that little bit of the spectrum. I can get my spot healing brush and that will do an approximation. So if I come in and I say, right, I'd like to actually start removing some of these little orange pieces, what we can do with our spot healing brush is we can just start to slowly paint some of those sounds out. And like the example that Tim gave with things like things that are happening in the background, a soccer ball that gets kicked up against the wall, and it was the perfect take. It was right where you wanted it to happen. You can just get your spot healing brush and you can just remove the sound of that soccer ball hitting the wall, and you'll identify it by simply listening back and forth. Now, let's get into some things that are a little bit more within the tool itself. Something here that we can do where we say, right, I'm going to get my regular time selection tool from the top in the center. I'm going to select intentionally the moment before I started talking. Now, what that is, that little bit of sound that we can see there, that's the sound of the room. No room is completely silent. Now, if you want to remove the sound of the room, the air conditioner, the general ambience, you can actually do that by going up to the top in the center of your screen. You click on Effects, and we come down and we say, right, let's go into Noise Reduction and Restoration. Now, there are a few things that we can do here. The first one, and I think this is a wonderful feature for students because it's not complex, all you do is go into this option that says Denoise. When you go into Denoise, it says, okay, what would you like to do? By how many decibels would you like to denoise? And you can actually move this up and down, and you can modify that ever so slightly, and you can change the amount of denoising back and forth and simply click apply, and it will remove a lot of the just general noise, things like the fan in a computer humming or buzzing, or the air conditioning unit, or anything like that. However, that's not what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to do something slightly more complex. I'm going to capture a noise print from this little section on the left-hand side that I've just selected. So if I go up to Effects, I come down to, again, Noise Reduction and Restoration, and we can capture a noise print manually, but I'm going to go into the noise reduction process because we can do it from within there. And this is a more comprehensive way of doing it. We say, right, noise reduction process. At the top of the noise reduction process, we can say capture a noise print. We capture a noise print. It's captured the noise print from our selection. Down in the center of that, I can actually select the entire file, but to capture a noise print of the entire file, that would only be if you've done a specific recording of the background ambient noise. For this instance, we only want to capture the noise print from the selection that we've made. Now, I know some of this is going to sound a little bit like witchcraft and wizardry to some people, but now all I need to do, I've done two things. I went to Effects, I said, let's do the noise reduction process, capture a noise print. All I do, bottom right-hand side, I click Apply. Watch what happens carefully. It's actually gone and it's done the noise reduction process based on what we said it was going to capture from that section. Now, because we've got a noise print, I can select the entire thing and I can remove that ambient noise from the entire thing. So I come back up to Effects. We come back down to Noise Reduction and Restoration. We say Noise Reduction Process. We've already captured a noise print. So all I do is click Apply. And it's now removed the ambient noise, just the sounds of the room, the air conditioner, the fan, things like that. It's removed that from the entire track. Really, really great feature. Absolutely amazing. And you can see how clean that looks now. It's actually gone through and it's picked out all those little bits and pieces. Let's go a step further. Up the top left-hand corner of the screen, I've only been working with a single track. I started with a simple recording. We started putting things in. I'm now going to click this button that says multi-track editor. So what I'd now do, I click the multi-track editor. Again, it asks me to give it a name. So I'm going to call this multi-track demo, because that makes sense to me. And for the purposes of a demonstration, I'm just going to pop it on my desktop. Again, the settings, leave them as they are. Click OK. That has now given us tracks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and it's given us an overall mix down as well. So what I can now see though is my original recording that I did is gone. You think, well, where did it go? It's given me all these extra tracks, but where is my original recording? Again, over in our media browser, over in our files, I can see here that audio recording 1, that original one that I had, it's right here. If I click it, all I need to do is bring that and bring it into my multi-track session. Now in my media browser, reminding you that we just go up to Window, come down, and we make sure our media browser is ticked on. I've got the folders already open, but all it does is allow you to search through your folders on your computer. I'm going to come into some of these little audio tracks that I've got here. I don't even know what they are. Let's just grab this one here. That's an animal sound, apparently. It's going to give me a little bit of a warning, and it's going to say, do you know what? The sample rate of that particular audio track is a bit different to the sample track that you've got on your audio recording. Simply just click OK. It's fine. It'll mix things down for you. What have I got here? Let's grab another sound sample, and I'm going to put that into track 3. That's another animal farm sound. What else do I have? So these ones were WAV files. This one here is an MP3. Just put in a few different ones. A dog barking. Obviously, we were working on some animal sounds at some point. Now, at any point, I can obviously click play, and I can listen to what I had, and we can see what's going on there. As it comes through and lands on all of those different tracks, you'll be able to start layering up your sound. We can then do things like put in backing tracks, voiceovers, little sound effects, and really start to build up a complex piece of audio. Any of these pieces of audio, we can go back and we can start to manipulate them in the same way we did at the beginning, simply by clicking on those, going into them, modifying them, and going back into our waveform view up on the top left-hand side of the screen. When we come back into our multi-track, we are now looking at all of those tracks together. If I want to come into this dog barking sound, I simply select it. It will appear white because it's been selected. I go into the waveform, and we can now see that that particular track, it's got some mess. It's got some things going on. The bit that I want is here. So what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to remove by clicking delete on my keyboard. Okay. And I'm going to now select some of this. I press delete on my keyboard. Okay. When I go to the top left-hand side of my screen and go back into my multi-track session, we can now see that that is a much shorter edit. And we can see that it's put these little fade-ins and fade-outs to actually allow for that to be just gradually put in. It's something that we don't want to just drop like a hammer, especially if it's something like an animal sound. Now, those kinds of things are really, really intuitive. And if you've ever worked with any kind of video editing software or anything like that, this type of interface is going to look fairly familiar to you. Now, a reality of sound is that it's actually the most important component to many of the multimedia things that we build. You will watch a film if it's too dark, if it's too fuzzy, if somebody stands up in the middle of the cinema and maybe walks past the screen, you'll keep watching it. But what you won't keep watching is something that has a tick or a buzz or a hiss. By clicking on these recordings that we have made or our students have made, going into that waveform editor, making some selections, removing some of those ticks, buzzes, hisses, hums, those kinds of things in simple ways, simply by selecting the section that is potentially a problem, going to our effects, going into things like noise reduction, restoration, and just seeing what those kinds of filters can do. Now, when we consider a filter, often with visual means, we think of a filter that's going to add something in. We can add sounds in, but often filters, even with visual means, are actually destructive. They're taking things out. They're removing pixels. They're manipulating things in that way. So when we go into our effects and we're doing noise reductions and restorations, they are filters just like we have with other things. Now, another thing that we can do is we can actually go in and we can generate sounds. We can generate things like noise. We can generate speech. We can generate tones. So if I go in and say, I would like to generate some noise, it's going to say, okay, the file reference, multi-track session. Okay, excellent. What that can do is it can actually build in some of those type of sound effects, that background noise. So I've shown you how to remove background noise, but sometimes we want to generate an effect. Sometimes we want to generate some kind of hiss. Those kinds of things can be really, really effective to create ambience, especially when we're working with students building things like podcasts.
Brett, that's been fantastic. Anything else you wanted to quickly share with us before we finish the session?
One last thing. When you're done, obviously, file save as is going to save this as a audition file. So when you want to come back to it and continue working on it, we always go file save as and save it as an audition file first. When we go file export file, or export the multi-track mixdown. I'm going to quickly go into my multi-track. We go file, export, multi-track mixdown. We want to make sure we multi-track mixdown our entire session, because if we don't export the entire session, it will only export the particular thing that you're working on. So you just mix down, export entire session, and you decide what you would like it to be, probably a waveform saved somewhere that makes sense to you. And I'll come back into our room.
And of course, Brett, the option of exporting it as an MP3 is there as well. You just change it.
Of course, absolutely. I've lost my screen sharing. There you go. You've done it for me. Thank you.
All done for you. Brett, I've also thrown in during your presentation there, I threw in these links here, Adobe Audition tutorials from the Adobe Help Center. And that's a nice way of just guiding your students or yourself through to get to know this application a bit more.
And they do pop up as tutorials the first time you open Audition. And if you don't say, don't open these again, they pop up each time. I had them pre-closed before we jumped in.
Nice. Brett, thank you so much for your time and the effort you put into getting that for us. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're watching Inject Creativity Live with Tim Kitchen and Erin Raithke.
Well, we have over 30,000 teachers who have enrolled in at least level 1 of the Adobe Creative Educator program. Please do promote this program with your colleagues via adobe.ly/ACE. The focus is not on Adobe skills, but understanding the importance of creativity in education.
If you'd like to be guided through level 1, Dr. Kitchen is running the next Be a Creative Educator course on Monday, the 18th of October, 4 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time to 6:30 p.m. More information can be found via our new short URL for this site, adobe.ly/creative educator. Here are some members of the program sharing why you should be involved.
You should join the Adobe Creative Educator program. You'll learn more and more about why creativity is such an important skill to teach our students.
You should join the Adobe Creative Educator program because it's such an amazing community of inspiring educators where everyone shares what they learn and the tips and tricks they learn with using Adobe products, but we also learn from each other as well. It's a really supportive group of people.
Because it's a great way for educators to stay connected with creative industries.
If you're not an Adobe Creative Educator yet, why not? It's time to get there. Great place to meet like-minded teachers, share resources, and get some great inspiration of other very creative individuals.
You should be an Adobe Creative Educator because it opens up a universe of ideas, resources, and access to amazing and inspirational professionals whose ideas and application and philosophies are incredibly inspirational and have helped me improve my practice, and I bet they'll do the same for you.
You should join the Adobe Creative Educator program because we need to do more than just talk about how important creativity is. We need to actually do it.
Hi folks, well it's now time to welcome our education thought leader for their 5-minute gem to inspire us and make us think more deeply about the importance of our role as educators.
Oh, well, there we go. Let's welcome our education thought leader for this episode, Paul Mclean from Rare Innovation in New Zealand. Welcome, Paul.
Hello, Tim. Hello, everyone. How are you?
Very well, fighting fit. And we're just going to hand it straight over to you now.
Oh, fantastic. I'll share my screen. I'll put it into present mode. And hopefully you can see this. So this here 5-minute clip is on the third of a digital mastery series articles that I've put through this particular forum. And this is based on how education leadership can be used to regenerate New Zealand and possibly internationally national imperatives for responses to COVID and beyond education. Now, in New Zealand terms, this is just a little snippet on what's happening in New Zealand, but the later section talks about some things that might be applicable more broadly. But in New Zealand, we're really privileged to have some major changes to our national curricula, particularly at secondary, which is the New Zealand NCA framework. There's a major opportunity now to drive creative and talent development orientated education because we've got now a more project orientated curricula. Some of the changes are absolutely fantastic and they bring to life the real rich potential for cross-curricular, vocational and authentic real-world competency-based education, which is absolutely fantastic. But underpinning it at junior level, we've now got in some schools, the Digital 2020 framework, which is more progression-based and competency-based learning as a solid foundation, which is absolutely fantastic. Within that, there's a significant focus on digital right across the curricular range, and more explicitly within digital technologies, design and visual communications, technology and business areas. But within this New Zealand side of things, we've also got some major changes to the tech licensing agreements. With the Microsoft Schools Agreement now, there's a real focus with the components to drive cloud-orientated and race to the top technologies, better technology choices in schools. And that in itself presents opportunities to drive more higher order, higher quality mobile device offerings as opposed to just the Chromebooks and tablets, which have been great, but they've tended to limit things. So supporting that, and I'm a huge fan of this, the Adobe Creative Cloud portfolio is heavily subsidized in schools, and that really offers some rich potential to drive that real world learning conversation. But skipping forward, if you think about it, the entire mix now with the Microsoft, the Adobe and the Autodesk environments, with the PLD frameworks, the Education Exchange and all of the rich material there, we can really drive now a strategic change conversation in schools, better technologies, why, what and how transformation toolkits. But for my focus, new leaders, really customizing leadership and credentialing to drive a different conversation in the schools about connecting to society. Now, the reason why this is important, and this is contained in the article, the Global Innovation Index has come out, and this is a good barometer of the quality of getting creative stuff done in schools and connecting to industry. We've got a few blips, gone from 9th in the world down to 26th in 10 years. Government effectiveness has dropped down to 11th. But the real impact as a result of COVID over the last 2 years and a lack of creativeness in school, we're now to 83rd in the world for our local market competition and diversification. And that's an expression of how we're producing higher medium quality tech outputs and creative exports, 64th in the world. So what that means in education terms, or what's underpinning it, we've got a massive education spend, but the opportunity now is to redirect that spend into more creative potential. 63rd in the world for large pupil and teacher ratios, really underpins the stagnation that's occurred in traditional education. So I'm going to flip forward now to some ideas. There's been a big conversation in education as a result of COVID, but also around education. We need to bring on the bench, and that's a big term that's floating around New Zealand at the moment. Bringing on the bench refers to getting active involvement from key players across education, across business, across entrepreneurship and innovation, involved in a regeneration approach, using education as a catalyst to really support how New Zealand sits and responds to its place in the world. So shifting from the health response into a more regeneration response. So in the article, I've talked about shifting the mental mode, going from that, the health impositions into a more creative orientated education industry response, bringing on the key personnel, the business experts, the innovation, entrepreneurship, and taking that transformative education leadership approach by using the new tools, using the new education frameworks, and using all the packages that Adobe offered into a regenerative education paradigm. Bringing on the team of 5 million is key to that, but really reshaping how the learning environment occurred in schools. So going real-world education, shifting and using that curriculum to full transformative effects, using tools and platforms to measure the approach, and really driving things forward there. But what we need to do that is to set tone and really get the aspirations going in schools through the new education leadership approach. But in the articles, and I've put the links into the documents here down the bottoms for everyone to see, please feel free to add any comments and respond on the applicability to other markets. I'll be very keen to understand how these things can be used more broadly.
Paul, if we can get a copy of the URL for that Spark page, that would be terrific. And
absolutely,
if you could throw it into the general chat, most people will get it that way. Put it into the private chat here as well so that Erin can get a copy of it and she can put it into her Spark page.
I actually have already found Paul's article. I noticed when you published it on LinkedIn, and I've popped that into the chat feed for all of our people who are watching live. Yes, LinkedIn, directly from your LinkedIn profile.
Oh, thank you.
Well done, Erin. That's great. And of course, Paul, are you able to hang around for a few minutes for our final?
Yeah, absolutely.
Because there might be some questions directly related to what you've just shared. That'd be wonderful. So thank you so much for your contribution.
Yeah, no problem. Sorry I rushed through it there. There's a lot to take in terms of New Zealand's education situation. So if there are any questions, I'll jump on the other side there, because I bet there's some applicability in Australia, given all the circumstances you guys have had over there too.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul.
We hope you're enjoying this episode of Inject Creativity Live with Tim Kitchen and Erin Ravke.
Well, if you're on Facebook and you're not already a member of the Australasian Adobe Education Community Facebook group, please join via facebook.com/groups/AUSAEL. But of course, Erin, that will only work if Facebook is actually running. We had a bit of a break, didn't we? But that's okay. It was during our night time, so we didn't really notice it nearly as much.
And it's always good to have these links in and contacts in different venues and different technologies, just in case something does happen to go sideways. It's a great way to keep regularly involved with Adobe and education and the wider community.
Our next Inject Creativity Live event will be on the 20th of October. That's again a Wednesday night at 6:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time. Keep that in mind. Our AEL presenter will be Adobe Education Leader Brett Salakis and Michelle Dennis, who's also an Adobe Education Leader. She will be our thought leader.
We will also have a special guest appearance from Dom Trainer, Adobe's education evangelist from Europe.
Oh, thank you, Erin. For those watching the recording of this episode, join us live if you can in the future. It's always much more fun and interactive when you can join us live.
For those watching live, get ready to move to bluejeans.com/kitchen.adobe for our brief fireside chat, and we will see you all at the next episode.
Special thank you to Jerry and to Erin for helping to put this show together.
And a very special thank you to Brett and Paul for their contribution to this episode. See you all next time.
Well, folks, thank you so much for watching this episode of Inject Creativity Live. For those who are watching live, join us via bluejeans.com/kitchen.adobe for an informal, non-recorded fireside chat to meet and interact with our presenters, as well as complete the feedback form and apply for a professional development certificate. If you are not watching this live, join us live next time. Use this QR code or link to find out more about dates and topics. On behalf of Dr. Kitchen and Erin Raithke, don't forget to keep being creative.